Let me ask you a question that might hit harder than you expect. If knowledge is power, why do so many people remain powerless, even when the truth is right in front of them? History is full of examples. In the Middle Ages, a woman using simple herbs to heal was called a witch and burned alive. Today, we call it herbal medicine. Back then, it was dangerous and forbidden. Now it's science. So what changed? Not the plants, not the remedies. What changed was consciousness. The resistance to growth isn't new, it's ancient, and it's not random. Every time humanity stumbles upon knowledge that threatens the status quo, that knowledge is attacked, ridiculed, suppressed. Why? Because true growth shakes foundations. It makes the old powers tremble. It threatens comfort zones, careers and systems built on keeping you small. And if you think this is just history, think again. Right now, in the modern world, entire practices of self-knowledge, yoga, meditation, energy work, are banned or condemned in some countries. Even in the land of the free, new ideas are often labeled dangerous, crazy, or too spiritual the moment they step outside the accepted box. So let me ask you again, if knowledge is power, why are you still stuck? Why are you still struggling to grow, even though you've read the books, watched the videos, taken the courses? It's because you are fighting not just ignorance, but resistance. Resistance from society, resistance from family and friends who tell you to be realistic, resistance from institutions that mock what they cannot explain, and most painfully, resistance from within yourself. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit. We don't resist growth because we're weak. We resist growth because growth demands death, the death of old beliefs, old identities, old comforts, and the human mind will fight to protect the familiar, even if the familiar is the very prison keeping you small. The first solution: expanding consciousness through all areas. So now we've exposed the hidden enemy of growth: resistance. Resistance from outside forces that fear change. Resistance from inside forces that cling to the familiar. But what's the antidote? What's the first weapon you can use to break through that invisible wall? The answer is this: expansion. Not expansion of wealth, not expansion of possessions, but expansion of consciousness. The illusion of partial knowledge. Think about it. We live in a world obsessed with specialization. Everyone wants to be the expert in one narrow lane. Doctors who only know the body, economists who only know numbers, engineers who only know machines. And yet how many times have you seen someone brilliant in one field completely collapse in another? A scientist with a PhD who can decode the mysteries of physics but knows nothing about the psychology of manipulation and becomes an easy target for a con artist. A financial genius who can move billions in markets but destroys their own health because they never studied nutrition or stress. A spiritual leader who speaks of enlightenment but falls into scandal because they never understood the shadows of human psychology. This is the illusion. Knowledge in one area makes you powerful, but the truth? Knowledge in one area makes you vulnerable. Because reality is not divided. Life is a prism with many colors, and if you only see one, you are blind to the rest. The prism of truth. Imagine holding a prism in your hand. Sunlight passes through, and suddenly you see 7 colors. Physics, chemistry, economics, sociology, psychology, spirituality, metaphysics. Each one is a ray of truth. Study one deeply enough, and eventually it will lead you to the center, to reality itself. But stop at the surface, and you remain stuck in fragments. This is why a true seeker of growth must expand across disciplines. Because life is not a puzzle you solve with one piece. It is a whole picture, and the pieces only make sense together. The courage of a scientist. A true scientist does not care if the truth offends society. A true scientist follows the evidence. even if it destroys everything they once believed. History is filled with those who paid the price for this courage. Galileo, imprisoned for saying the earth revolves around the sun. Tesla, ridiculed for ideas that now shape our modern world. Every pioneer condemned, not because they were wrong, but because they dared to expand beyond what was convenient. This is the model for us. To grow, you must be willing to explore both the official and the hidden, the recognized and the ridiculed, the seen and the unseen, because what society calls occult today may be tomorrow's science, the danger of stagnation. But here's the trap. Resistance thrives on your comfort zone. When you believe that what you know is enough, you stop searching. When you accept only what's approved, you blind yourself to higher truths. When you cling to a career, a belief, a community out of fear, you stop evolving. And here's the cost: stagnation, mediocrity, repeating the same year over and over again, calling it a life, because the world changes every day, and if you are not expanding, you are shrinking. The American mirror, let's make it real. In America today, how many people still believe credit equals money? They swipe, they borrow, they consume, never realizing credit is debt. They were never taught to see deeper, to expand consciousness into economics. How many trust blindly in pharmaceuticals without ever questioning nutrition, lifestyle, or the power of the mind? They were never taught to expand into holistic health. How many are chained by culture wars, seeing everything as left versus right, black versus white, without realizing that the real game is energy, vibration, and control? They were never taught to expand into psychology and spirit. This is not about politics, this is about awareness, because until you expand across body, mind, and spirit, you are trapped. The power of integration. So here is the first solution: integrate. Don't study only the body. Study the mind, study the spirit. Don't study only science, study philosophy, study metaphysics. Don't study only the physical, study the invisible. Because the universe doesn't separate these things, you do. And the more you expand your lens, the more patterns you see. The more patterns you see, the more resistance dissolves. Expansion is power because it reveals connections that small minds cannot see. The Star Trek metaphor. Think about Star Trek. The writers talk about subspace, a mysterious dimension where ships travel faster than light, where teleportation becomes possible. To the audience, it's fiction. To a mystic, it's recognition, because what they call subspace, others call the astral. What they imagine with science fiction is already known in metaphysical traditions. The point is this: if you only listen with one vocabulary, you miss the truth. Expand your language, and suddenly, what looked impossible makes perfect sense. The spiritual dimension of growth. And this is where resistance hits hardest, the spiritual. Because the moment you expand into spirit, into energy, into the unseen, you challenge the most powerful lie of all, that you are only matter. But you are not. You are consciousness inhabiting matter, and when you expand awareness of that, everything changes. This is why yoga, meditation, breathwork, and other ancient practices threaten certain powers. Not because they are dangerous, but because they awaken people, and an awakened person is ungovernable. The personal challenge. So let me ask you, where have you limited yourself to one color of the prism? Where have you been told this is all there is and accepted it without question? Where have you ignored the spiritual because it didn't fit your education? Or ignored the scientific because it didn't fit your beliefs? That is resistance, and expansion is the cure. The first breakthrough. The moment you begin to study outside your comfort zone, when you read, observe, and experience from multiple angles, resistance weakens. You stop seeing the world as random. You start seeing it as a system, a living, breathing algorithm of growth. And once you step into that system consciously, life stops being something that happens to you. It becomes something that responds to you. Transition to the bigger problem. But here's the catch. Even when you expand, even when you integrate knowledge across disciplines, even when you awaken to body, mind, and spirit, there's still a limit. Because sooner or later, you hit a wall. The wall of conventional knowledge, the ceiling of what society calls real. And beyond that ceiling is the bigger problem, the realm of the metaphysical, the truths that demand not just study, but a leap of consciousness. And if you resist that leap, no amount of knowledge will save you. Because the real resistance is not out there, it's within. The bigger problem, the ceiling of conventional knowledge. So maybe you've already broken free from the first trap. You've stopped being the specialist who only knows one slice of the prism. You've expanded into psychology, philosophy, spirituality, economics, health. You've seen connections most people miss. That's growth. That's power. But here's the shocking truth. Even that isn't enough. Because sooner or later you hit a ceiling. A wall that no book, no university, no government, no mainstream authority wants you to cross. It's the ceiling of conventional knowledge. The invisible wall. You'll know you've hit it when the questions in your mind outgrow the answers in the textbooks. When you ask, why do UFOs move in ways that break every law of physics we know? Or, how can ancient practices like meditation or breathwork heal conditions modern medicine still struggles with? Or, why do spiritual experiences across cultures tell the same story of dimensions beyond this one? At that point, you'll hear the phrase, every true seeker learns to hate. We don't study that. That's not real science. That's superstition. But is it really? Or is it just inconvenient? The case of the witch. Remember the women burned at the stake for using herbs? Back then, it wasn't science, it was witchcraft. Today, we call it herbal medicine. The herbs didn't change. The knowledge didn't change. Only society's willingness to recognize it did. So ask yourself, how many truths are we still burning today, not with fire, but with ridicule? How many discoveries are being dismissed simply because they threaten the status quo? The fiction that isn't fiction. Think about Star Trek. They talk about subspace, a mysterious realm that allows faster-than-light travel and teleportation. To most, it's science fiction, but to anyone who's studied the metaphysical, it's a familiar description of the astral plane. Different vocabulary, same reality. And here's the catch. If you don't have the eyes to see it, you miss it. If you only listen through the filter of conventional science, you dismiss it as fantasy. But if you expand into metaphysics, you recognize truth hiding in plain sight. The bigger problem isn't that these realities don't exist. It's that resistance convinces you they're not worth exploring. The seven-armed candle. Why does a menorah have 7 arms? Because the ancients knew of the 7 primary energy centers, the chakras, that modern science is only beginning to study. Symbols surround us, encoded in religion, art, culture. But conventional knowledge tells you to ignore them, to laugh at them, to call them myth. And so most people remain blind, trapped under the ceiling, never realizing that the very things they dismiss are keys to the next level of growth. The limits of official science. Even Nobel Prize-winning physicists admit it. Niels Bohr said, "Physics is not about reality itself, but only about what we can measure." Think about that. The most respected branch of science doesn't even claim to study ultimate reality. It studies phenomena, what can be observed, repeated, and measured. But what about what can't be measured yet? What about consciousness itself? What about dimensions beyond time and space? What about materialization and dematerialization phenomena witnessed in spiritual centers across the world? The official answer: We don't study that, and there's the resistance again, this time dressed in a lab coat. The individual barrier. But here's where it gets personal. The bigger problem isn't only the system's resistance, it's your own. Because crossing that ceiling demands a leap of consciousness, and the leap terrifies people. Why? Because beyond the ceiling is the realm of metaphysics, thoughts so abstract, truths so vast, they demand you let go of everything you thought you knew. And the ego hates that. The ego clings to certainty, to formulas, to recognition. It says, if the university doesn't teach it, if the government doesn't approve it, if my friends don't believe it, then I won't touch it. That's not science. That's fear, and that fear keeps you small. The choice that limits knowledge. Here's a truth that cuts deep. Your moral choices limit your intellectual growth. Why? Because reaching higher levels of knowledge requires a level of abstraction, humility, and openness that people who choose selfishness or corruption cannot sustain. It's not punishment, it's physics. If you choose fear, greed, or cruelty, your vibration drops. And with it, your ability to grasp higher truths collapses. That's why some of the most brilliant minds can't cross the ceiling. It's not their brains, it's their hearts, the resistance within. So let's be brutally honest. The real resistance to growth isn't the church, the government, or even the university. It's you. It's the part of you that clings to safety, that whispers, don't go further, don't ask, don't risk being wrong. That whisper is the true ceiling. And until you silence it, no amount of study will take you further. The transition to the final solution, and here's where the bigger problem reaches its climax. Because even if you expand your consciousness, even if you gather knowledge from science and spirit alike, even if you're willing to cross the ceiling, there is still something inevitable waiting for you, something no one can avoid, something built into the very structure of the universe. It's called chaos, and chaos is not random. It is the universe's ultimate weapon against resistance. If you refuse to grow by choice, chaos will force you to grow by necessity. That's where we go next, the definitive solution. Because once you understand how to use chaos as a catalyst, resistance no longer holds you back. It becomes the very fuel that propels you forward. Chaos as the catalyst for ultimate growth. So now we face the biggest truth of all. You can resist knowledge. You can resist growth. You can cling to comfort zones, to careers, to beliefs, to old identities. But resistance has an expiration date. Because there is one force in the universe you cannot avoid, escape, or outsmart. That force is chaos, the nature of chaos. Chaos is not random. Chaos is not punishment. Chaos is the algorithm of the universe correcting imbalance. Think about it. Every system in nature, from galaxies to ecosystems, uses chaos as a reset. Forests burn, and in burning, they release seeds that can only sprout in fire. Rivers flood, and in flooding, they deposit nutrients that renew the soil. Stars collapse, and in collapsing, they create the elements that form planets, life, and even you. Chaos is not destruction for the sake of destruction. Chaos is destruction for the sake of renewal. Chaos in human life. And in your life, chaos works the same way. The sudden breakup, the unexpected job loss, the diagnosis you never saw coming, the financial collapse. You called it disaster. But the universe called it correction. Because without chaos, you would never leave the comfort zone. You would never question the familiar. You would never break the shell that keeps you small. Chaos is the universe saying, grow, or I will make you grow. The illusion of security. This is where most people suffer. They believe security is real, the steady job, the stable marriage, the predictable routine. But security is an illusion. It is resistance disguised as safety. And chaos is the great revealer. One economic downturn, one unexpected event, one global crisis, and suddenly the foundation crumbles, and you realize the security you trusted was never real. It was borrowed, temporary, a comfort zone on life support. Chaos doesn't steal your security. Chaos exposes that you never had it in the first place. The personal example. Think about the moments in your life when you grew the most. Were they comfortable? Were they peaceful? Or were they chaotic? Was it the heartbreak that forced you to rediscover your worth? The financial collapse that forced you to learn true abundance? The failure that humbled you, sharpened you, and prepared you for greater success? Every major breakthrough rides on the back of chaos, because chaos breaks what you refuse to release. The paradox of chaos. Here's the paradox. The people who resist chaos suffer. The people who embrace chaos grow. Two people can face the exact same storm. One collapses, curses, and clings to the past. The other breathes, adapts, and uses the storm as fuel. The storm is the same. The outcomes are worlds apart. The difference is not in the chaos. The difference is in the response. Chaos as a spiritual law. Even science hints at this. The study of chaos theory shows that what looks random often follows hidden order. Patterns emerge where the eye first sees only noise. In spiritual terms, chaos is simply the universe reorganizing reality to match higher frequencies. When you raise your vibration, old structures cannot hold, they collapse, and that collapse feels like chaos until the new structure emerges. Chaos is the bridge between the old self and the new self, between the life you outgrew and the life you're meant to live. The American mirror of chaos. Let's make this real. The pandemic, chaos on a global scale. Some people broke. Others built new businesses, found new purpose, reshaped their lives. The financial crisis, chaos in markets. Some collapsed into fear, while others discovered new opportunities and wealth. Personal crises, addiction, divorce, failure. Some lost themselves forever. Others used the same chaos to awaken. The chaos was the same. The people were different. How to use chaos as fuel. So how do you stop fearing chaos and start using it as fuel? 1. Recognize it as neutral. Chaos isn't against you. It isn't for you. It simply is. It's the reset button. 2. Release the old. When chaos strikes, instead of clinging tighter, ask, what is this trying to break that no longer serves me? 3. Anchor in vision. While the storm rages, hold your frequency steady. Focus on who you are becoming, not what is crumbling. 4. Act from alignment. Don't react out of fear. Respond from your new self. Every action in chaos is amplified. 5. Trust the process. Know that chaos always passes. And what remains afterward is stronger, cleaner, more aligned. The story of the phoenix. This is why so many cultures use the symbol of the phoenix, a bird consumed by fire, only to rise from the ashes more radiant than before. That fire is chaos. That rising is growth. You are not meant to escape the fire. You are meant to rise through it. The transition to the final message. And here's the ultimate revelation. Resistance to growth cannot last. You can resist knowledge. You can resist expansion. You can resist the call of your own soul, but chaos will come, and chaos will break what you refuse to break. It will burn what you refuse to release. It will tear apart what you cling to, not to punish you, but to free you. So the only real choice you have is this. Will you grow by choice or by chaos? Because one way or another, you will grow. The emotional closing. When a seed breaks, it looks like destruction. But in truth, it's the beginning of life. When a caterpillar dissolves inside the cocoon, it looks like death. But in truth, it's becoming the butterfly. And when chaos tears apart your plans, your routines, your illusions, it feels like the end. But in truth, it's the doorway. The universe never punishes growth. It demands it, and every time you face chaos, you are standing at that sacred threshold. One step backward, and you collapse into fear. One step forward, and you discover who you were meant to be. The fire was never here to burn you. The fire was here to set you free. The Chaos Algorithm's test. If this message hit you, don't just nod and move on. This is your moment to act inside the algorithm of chaos. Chaos always asks one question. Will you collapse into fear or step forward into growth? Right now, you have the chance to prove your choice. Hit like, not for me, but as your signal to the universe that you are done resisting. Leave a comment declaring, I choose growth through chaos, because when you write it, you program it into your own field, and subscribe with the bell on, because if you walk away, resistance will drag you back. But if you return, video after video, you'll keep sharpening your frequency until chaos no longer breaks you. It builds you. This isn't about clicks. This is the training ground of your soul. The fire is here. The chaos is here. The question is simple. Will you run or will you rise?